Hi, welcome to my channel English Audio Stories. Ready for today's English story? Let's go. The Lantern Man. David stepped out of the small bus and looked around the quiet village of Hollowford. The air smelled of wet grass and old chimneys, and the hills around the village were covered by low clouds. He pulled his backpack onto his shoulder and started walking toward his aunt's house. It was his first visit here in almost 10 years, and the place felt smaller than he remembered. On the way, he passed two elderly men sitting on a bench near the church. They stopped talking when he walked by, watching him with slow, curious eyes. One of them nodded to the hill behind the village. "You came at the wrong time, boy," he said. "The nights have been strange lately." The other man whispered, "Lantern Man is back." David opened his mouth to ask, but they already turned away. Aunt Margaret welcomed him with a warm hug, yet her smile felt tense. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "Just don't go out at night. People are nervous." Later that evening, as David unpacked, he looked out of the window. The hill stood dark and silent. Then, at exactly 1 minute past 1 o'clock, a faint light appeared near the top. It didn't move. It simply hovered in the darkness, like a lonely star too close to the ground. A soft chill went down his spine. The old men hadn't been joking. The next morning, David walked through the village to buy a few things for breakfast. Hollowford looked peaceful in daylight, yet people seemed unusually quiet. In the small shop, an elderly woman with silver hair watched him carefully as he chose bread and tea. "You're Margaret's nephew," she said. "You arrived last night." David nodded. "Yes, I saw a light on the hill." The woman's hands shook slightly as she wrapped his change. "Then listen well. Don't look at it again. And whatever you do, don't follow it." Before he could ask more, another customer entered, and she hurried away. Outside, a cold wind swept through the street. David turned and saw a child drawing with chalk on the pavement. The picture showed a tall figure holding a lantern. The face was nothing but a blank oval. "Who is that?" David asked. "The man from the hill," the boy answered. "He watches us. Mum says he only comes when something bad is near." David felt a strange tension in the air, as if the whole village was waiting for something. When he returned to his aunt's house, she was standing by the window, pale and nervous. "Did you see anyone?" she asked. "No, just people." Aunt Margaret shook her head. "If the lantern shines 3 nights in a row, it means he's trying to warn us." That night, David couldn't sleep. He sat on his bed, listening to the quiet house. At exactly 1:13, he felt a soft glow against the wall. He moved to the window slowly. The light was back, but this time, it was closer. The third night in Hollowford felt heavier than the previous ones. Even the air seemed thicker, carrying a quiet tension that made David check the windows more often than he wanted to admit. When the clock reached 1:13, the familiar glow appeared on the hill again, brighter than before, almost sharp against the darkness. David took a deep breath, put on his jacket, and stepped outside. The village was silent, as if everyone was holding their breath. Gravel crunched under his shoes while he walked toward the foot of the hill. With every step, the light grew clearer, steady and unnaturally still. Halfway up, he stopped. Someone, or something, was standing near the old oak tree, a tall figure holding a lantern. David expected movement, breathing, anything human. But the figure didn't shift an inch. The lantern's flame didn't flicker. It burned with a cold, white glow. David swallowed hard and raised his voice. "Hello, do you need help?" The figure slowly turned its head toward him. David froze. Where the face should have been, there was only a smooth, pale surface. No eyes, no mouth, no features at all. Just emptiness. A sudden gust of wind made the lantern ring softly, like distant metal. The sound echoed strangely across the hill. David stumbled back, heart racing. As he did, something glinted near his foot. A rusty object half buried in the grass. He picked it up with shaking hands. It was an old, dented lantern, the same shape as the one held by the faceless figure. David looked up again. The figure was gone. Only the cold light remained, floating in the air like a warning. David ran back to the house with the old lantern still in his hand. His aunt was waiting in the kitchen, fully dressed, as if she had expected him to return shaken. When she saw the lantern, her face turned completely white. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "Up on the hill," David answered. "It was lying in the grass, and I saw him, the faceless man. He was holding the same one." Aunt Margaret closed her eyes for a moment. Then she motioned for David to sit down. "You deserve to know the truth. Long ago, Hollowford wasn't just a farming village. There was a mine inside that hill. People worked there for decades. One of them was Thomas Hale, the night guard." David listened carefully as she continued. "Thomas was responsible for checking the lamps and warning the miners about dangerous gas. He always carried a lantern. One night, the tunnel collapsed. They said he stayed inside to make sure everyone else escaped. When they returned, they found only his lantern. His body never appeared." David looked at the dented metal in his hand, suddenly feeling its weight differently. "So people think he came back? Some say his spirit walks the hill, trying to protect the village like he did back then," Margaret said. "Others believe he appears only when another disaster is near. The light follows patterns, and now it has shined 3 nights in a row." A cold shiver crawled up David's spine. "So he's warning us?" Before his aunt could answer, a deep rumble echoed from somewhere beneath the ground, long, low, and unmistakable. The hill trembled, and the light on the slope flared brighter than ever. The rumble faded, but the silence that followed felt even heavier. David grabbed the old lantern and ran outside, guided by the pale glow shining from the hillside. His aunt called after him, but he was already halfway up the path, pushed forward by a strange mixture of fear and certainty. The lantern man stood at the top, completely still, the white flame in his hand brighter than ever. The ground trembled again, a warning deep beneath the earth, like something shifting in forgotten tunnels. David stopped a few meters away. "What do you want me to see?" he whispered. As if answering, the faceless figure slowly raised its lantern and pointed toward a narrow crack in the hillside. David stepped closer and noticed fresh soil spilling out. The old mine entrance, sealed for decades, had begun to collapse. If the hill gave way, rocks would roll straight toward the village below. David understood. "You're trying to protect them," he said quietly. The figure lowered its lantern, and for the first time, the cold light flickered softly, almost like a nod. David ran back to the village and woke the neighbors. People poured out of their houses, confused, but when the ground shook again, they didn't question him. By dawn, the lower part of the hill had crumbled, but no one was hurt. The village had been saved. When David looked up to the ridge, the lantern man was still there, fading slowly with the morning light. As the sun rose, the figure dissolved into the mist, leaving only the soft glow of a dying flame. The old lantern in David's hand felt warm for a moment, and then went dark forever. Hollowford was safe. And the Lantern Man's watch was finally over. Great job, you finished the story. Keep listening, keep learning, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.